Good morning, grinders. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD. You're going to follow me on Twitter. It's Friday, July 26th. We'll be taking a look at tomorrow's UFC 304 slate on DraftKings. We got 2 5-round fights, 2 title fights coming from Manchester, England. It's a 6 p.m. Eastern start time here in the United States. Hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. Hit the thummy thumbs. You know how much I like the thummy thumbs, or as John would put his thumb across the screen like this. Wave that thumb at me. There you go. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Join with me, John Breslin, a.k.a. Squirrel Patrol, who is putting out the Squirrels Takedowns article that is typically for RG Premium members, but it is our freebie Friday today. So everyone, it's publicly open. Be out later today. But remember, if you get everything else here, the ownership, the projections, the breakdowns, the ground and pound podcast, the sim outputs, you could get for just one low price, $40 off your first month. If you want to get 6 months of RG Premium, we're actually giving $250 off. So take advantage of that while it's still available. John, we got 14 fights. They're weighing in right now. Hopefully, we keep it at 14, but these large slates I like because a little less duplication, a little bit more focus on maybe finishing equity, higher scores, maybe a 72-point underdog win may not make the optimal lineup. But we have two 5-round fights. We usually start off our conversation with how much do we think about fading the 5-round fight, the main event? We got 2 of them. We got Aspinall, 9,400, Blades, 6,800. We got Leon Edwards, 8,800, Bilal Muhammad, 7,400. I think from a fight breakdown perspective, I mean, of course, we're more DFS strategy people and less, ball knowers when it comes to UFC. But the more enticing fight from a ceiling perspective, I think, is Aspinall Blades. Probably doesn't go 5 rounds. It probably doesn't matter that it's a 5-round fight. And the one that is less appealing from a ceiling perspective is the Edwards-Muhammad fight, who's more likely to go 5 rounds. But it's 8,800, 7,400. So they don't have to do nearly as much as someone like Tom Aspinall does in the 9K range, or as little as Blades has to do. If Blades wins, probably wins with a big score. He's 6,800, probably going to be optimal. How are you handling these 2 5-round fights? And the main questions here are, if you had a choice, are more of your lineups going to have 2 people from 2 5-round fighters, 1 5-round fighter, 0 5-round fighters?
So 2 5-round fights, but that's almost not true because the Aspinall Blades fight, I think, is minus 1,000 not to go the distance. So we might not be getting extra rounds from that one, right? And it's one where we could definitely see it end pretty early, but that actually makes it kind of appealing because it could end early, but it's more of an appealing fight than it is like an appealing 5-round fight. Just because like the chances we're getting like the 4th and 5th round of scoring probably aren't that high. And they're not necessarily fighters where that would even be great. And then the other fight is interesting because the Leon Edwards Bilal Muhammad fight is favored to go the distance, and they're both really low scoring. So even going the distance, like Leon Edwards is putting up like 80 points in a win. So I think it's a good card to be under the main events or under the 5-round fights. And I say that with the knowledge that Aspinall is, I think, projected for about 58% ownership. He's got about a 50-50 shot of winning in the first round. He is 9,400, so that's really expensive. I don't know that he should be 58% owned. I think even at his price tag at 9,400, there's a chance he wins in the first round and doesn't land on the winning line. I think we even saw that with like Michel Pereira a few pay-per-views back where he got the quick win bonus, I think. And he was like 9,500 and didn't land on the winning line just because he was priced so high. So yeah, 2 5-round fights. One of them low paced and likely to go the distance. One likely to end very early. Uh, I will might be under the field on both of them, I think. And then in terms of like how many fighters, I would probably say a lot of my lineups will have just one fighter from the 5-round fights. And some of my lineups will have zero, which I think will be a very unique thing.
Well, I think we have to take a look at like the spreads of the fights. We talk about the contextual variables of a slate on what the optimal lineup is more or less likely to look like. 14 fights means that we care more about ceiling outputs, but also the spreads of these fights are pretty wide. I mean, Daniel Wood minus 400, Aspinall minus 405, Patterson minus 425, Molly McCann minus 350, Mick Parkin minus 280, Arnold Allen minus 220, even and Leon Edwards is minus 250, Kayla Lofgren minus 210, and we're already in the 8K range. So we talk about these 9K fighters about like, will they score enough to make the optimal lineup? On that slate that you mentioned with Michelle Pereira, that was a slate where like the ITD lines on that slate, like half the fights were like going to finish inside the distance they were favored to. This slate, the ITD lines aren't all that great. I mean, we it's hard to find ones that are like 40+%. So scoring may be at a premium. So like I know I don't think Aspinall is going to be 58% owned, but I'm not necessarily sure that there are enough 9K fighters that if someone puts up like 110, 115, they may end up being like the highest scoring fighter on the slate. Like it may be one of these slates where Nathaniel Wood's 9,500, but he scores 118, and like there's only two other fighters that score over 100 anyway, and you're just gonna need the high. Just from a raw points perspective, like you could just make your lineup, and a score of 642 wins the GPP, and that's the way it is. So these 9K fighters, Aspinall obviously has the best win odds, but I agree with you that like just get it out of your mind that it's even a 5-round fight. Just picture this as a 3-round heavyweight fight, and that's it. And then go, do you want Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades? But you got Nathaniel Wood minus 115 against Daniel Pineda, Patterson against Kiefer Crosby minus 225. And I know you currently in lineup HQ have Molly McCann tagged plus 155 against Bruna Brazil. I mean, I'm not particularly I don't particularly like the underdogs in these matchups. So out of these 9K fighters, which ones are you more or less are going to have more or less of, assuming that Aspinall is going to be the highest owned out of this bunch?
Yeah, so like you said, the lines are pretty wide. I think last week we had 11 fights and we didn't have a single fighter less than 30 or 33% odds of getting a win. This week we have 14 fights on scheduled, and we have 6 out of the 14 fights where the underdog has less than a 30% chance of winning the fight. I think so that we might not have a bunch of underdogs. I mean, we will surely have a couple of underdogs that win, and probably even one of these really low price underdogs will win. But we're probably not going to get like multiple. But who knows? There could be complete chaos. We don't know. I like Molly McCann, probably of the 9K fighters, the best because she's going to go lower owned with the lower inside the distance line, the lower first round win, odds. But I think she can put up a big score in a decision. So I'd rather be over the field on her. I think it's interesting, like comparing Aspinall and Sam Patterson. They're actually numerically like somewhat similar. They have similar win odds. They have similar first round win odds, but all of the ownership's going to go to Aspinall because it's a 5-round fight, but it's probably not a 5-round fight. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And I think it's a good way to look at it to say, like, this really isn't a 5-round fight. This is just a heavyweight fight. It could end early, but like, should Patterson have 40% ownership and should Aspinall have 58%? Like that, that should probably be a similar number.
How about Nathaniel Wood? He's the most expensive fighter. Minus 115 is nowhere near as close as minus 350, minus 225 inside the distance lines. Do you think Wood is going to be kind of the odd man out up here, being that he's the most expensive? And really, from a fighting style perspective, like if Nathaniel Wood doesn't get a first round knockout, I mean, I don't think I don't see how he pays off a $9,500 salary. Is this the type of thing where he's plus 265 to win in the first round? That equates to obviously, without taking out the VIG, 27%. Are you just your normal type of reaction is like, if he has a 27% chance to win in the first round, I'm going to play at least 27 or like close to 27% of him? Or are you much more likely to be just under on Nathaniel Wood just because his fighting style, even in a first round win, doesn't necessarily lead to 140 plus points?
Yeah, I don't think Wood's going to get to the ownership that we're projecting. Because I think we're projecting 31, 32% ownership. And nobody's going to, I don't say nobody, but like people are not going to click on him instead of like Aspinall or Patterson with their inside the distance lines and first round win odds. I probably won't own Wood at 30%. Yeah, 27% probability for a first round win. On a card with spreads this wide, I can see him, like, he's even more expensive than Aspinall. So I could see him getting the first round win and not landing on the winning one. So I would probably be under 27%. We'll see. It'll probably be around 27%, and we'll see what happens with any kind of line movement. But I'm not going to roster him at 30%, and I might not even get up to the 27%.
Well, the least appealing 9K fighter, I mean, we have him projected at 5% ownership. I don't think it'll be that low. This Arnold Allen Giga Chikadze fight. Allen's 9,000, Chikadze's 7,200. Allen's a minus 220 favorite, plus 260 inside the distance. I don't particularly care for either side of this fight from a ceiling perspective. But Arnold Allen, plus 600 round one, that's equates to 14%. Is this the type of thing where, this fight is not appealing at all, especially 9K Arnold Allen, but you'll still end up with like 10-ish% of him anyway, because, well, that's kind of the 90% of the time doesn't get out. It gets out of the first round. The score isn't viable, but there is a 10% chance that Allen knocks out Giga, and a 9K fighter with 105 points is optimal.
Yeah, exactly. I think he'll be higher than 5% owned. My guess is he'll be about 10% owned. My guess is I'll roster him at about 10% in the large field contest. If he gets the first round win, he could get a first round win, and if he does at 9,000, he's cheaper than a lot of other fighters people are going to be targeting. Like if Allen gets a first round win and Aspinall gets a first round win, who scores higher? I don't know. So I'll have multiple times our 5% projected ownership, but I probably won't go over 15%. I think he's I do think he's a really interesting large field tournament play. He's definitely not a fighter I'm targeting just because he's not likely to put up a high score, but there is a chance. So he'll definitely be represented in my 150 set. And I will gladly take some of that Nathaniel Wood ownership and even some of that like Tom Aspinall ownership and add 5 or 10% more to Arnold Allen.
Let's take a look at the mid-range fights to target. I think a very clear one is the Christian Leroy Duncan against Gregory Rodriguez fight. Duncan 8,300, Rodriguez 7,900. Duncan is plus 125 inside the distance. Rodriguez is plus 185 inside the distance. It's pretty much a pick 'em. Duncan's a slight favorite. Duncan, not the highest of volume, but kind of like a kill or be killed type of fighter. And RoboCop is it's kind of the same way. He may have a little bit more wrestling, but doesn't mean he uses it that much. This is the fight that I believe, is the most likely, outside of Aspinall Blades, the most likely to end inside the distance. And at this price point, right in the middle, 8,300, 7,900, I feel like maybe I don't know what side to choose, but I'd want to have a lot of this fight because I think the winner is optimal regardless of who wins.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good fight to be priced in the mid range. And yeah, it's kind of going back and forth over Gregory Rodriguez if he was going to be a fighter that I was going to tag and write up. And I still might get there. Yeah, it is. It's a good fight to target. It's got a good chance to end inside the distance. Got a good chance to end early, and they don't need to necessarily put up a massive score at that price tag. Like whoever wins, like 7,900 and 8,300. Like that is the kind of fight that like they're not necessarily going to be that high scoring if it doesn't end early, but they don't necessarily need to be. So that's like this is the kind of like striking only fight that I like to target, because they can get there multiple ways at that price tag. So yeah, it's a good fight to target. I believe Christian Leroy Duncan is the local fighter in favored a little bit, but yeah, similar styles, I believe. So yeah, good fight to target.
The fight that's right in the middle, you have him tagged in lineup HQ. It's this Bobby Green, or King Green now. That's his legal name, King Green. But it's still, we all know him as Bobby Green, against Paddy Pimblett. We all know Paddy the Batty. They're fighting in England, so we have all of these English fighters that have home crowd advantage. Bobby Green is actually favored slightly, but Paddy Pimblett has the much better ITD line. It is a Bobby Green fight. I completely disagree with the ownership that we have. We have Green at 26% and Pimblett at 17%, and I think it's more likely to be flipped with this because I typically don't play Bobby Green. Like Bobby Green is the outside fighter, with hands down, and he jab, and then he does a little shimmy and dang, and the talks in your face and whatever, and next thing you know, he wins and scores 58 points. So like, I'm much more interested in Paddy Pimblett, but if he ends up being 25% owned, I mean, I think I don't think he's that great of a fighter. And I actually think Bobby Green is a much better fighter than people think he is. It's just that he's not very good for DFS. So, like, how much interest do you have at this fight? Because it's also like right in the middle. And if there's a finish here, if Patty comes out and wins, even in the second round with the knockout, I think that score is viable and possible for the optimal lineup. You have him tagged, so I'm typically under on Patty because he tends to be over-owned, but it seems like you have interest in him today and tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. I think he could put up a high score. I mean, he has better inside the distance and first round win odds than Bobby Green, or sorry, King Green. And I agree. Like he's going to score better than Green. And the fight's about a coin flip. And I do think Pimblett has a reputation for not being a very good fighter. Right? He's a fighter that UFC's kind of set up for success, giving him kind of softball matchups, and he's won. So a couple of his decision wins were kind of unexpected. Like he didn't go out and put up that good of a performance. People generally thought the other fighter won, and then somehow Pimblett pulls out the decision. And I think that's going to make people a little bit hesitant to click on him. And but the fight's a coin flip. So yeah, Pimblett should not have lower ownership than Green, especially because he's going to score better. So I mean, yeah, if our ownership is way off or something, and Pimblett comes in at like 35% owned instead of like the 18 we got projected, well, then I'm going to end up under the field. But I do think he should be rostered more than 18%, and I do think he should be rostered more than King Green.
Okay, we'll take a look at underdogs, because that's your specialty when it comes to the takedowns article. Last, but are there any other fights that you're looking to target where maybe you have a good interest in both sides of the fight, and especially in this mid range? Because I mean, we covered a lot of stuff. I mean, we got Lawford Hadley, Parsons, Elliott, Makayev, Kopp. there's some wrestling in some of these fights. Are any of these fights ones you're targeting, or maybe it's something that I haven't mentioned?
No, actually, I think you hit on the ones that I'm pretty interested in. I'm interested in the Mikhaev Cop fight. Mikhaev is a guy that can get like just pile up takedowns. So that's definitely something I'm interested in. He just literally just weighed in a few minutes ago, and it was kind of a humorous scene because he was weighing in somewhat late, and he said he was calling for the box because he said he was going to make, he felt he was going to need the box, right? Take off the shorts and stuff to make weight. They waved off the box and just had him step on the scale for like a second. Instead, he made weight, and he was confused because he knew he was going to make weight. Um, but yeah, he's the fight's on. So yeah, and I think Mikhaev can put up a monster score. This is one where I'm more interested in the favorite than the underdog. Like Hop isn't necessarily going to put up a really high score in a win, but Mikhaev could. Mikhaev is a guy that's got like double digit takedowns in a fight before. And this could be one of those fights where he gets like double digit takedowns. Cop's more Manel Cop more of a striker, gonna depend more on like a knockout to get the win, which could happen as well. But yeah, I'm more interested in the Mikhaev side. And then the was it Preston Parsons and Oban Elliott is another fight. I'm actually pretty interested in both sides. I would say Elliott is not as high of a score as Parsons, but Parsons is another taker. Another fighter can get multiple takedowns. I think he's favored for over 3.5 takedowns. So that's something I'm definitely interested in the Parsons side. But then Oban Elliott's only 7,600. So if he like kind of upsets the apple carts and gets the win, that could be a high scoring win for 7,600. He's only had one UFC fight, I think, and he put up over 100 TK points in a 3-round decision. And he can get some takedowns as well. So that's the fight that I'm interested in.
Okay, let's talk about underdogs. Okay, so Bilal Muhammad is 7,400. Obviously in the 5-round fight. We talked about Curtis Blades, 6,800. So we got those covered, right? Bilal Muhammad, if he wins, probably puts up around 80 or 90 even in a 5-round fight. So going to be owned, probably, on a slate where a lot of favorites win. I think Bilal Muhammad lineups are going to look good for the optimal if, obviously he wins and with a low score. And obviously Curtis Blades. If Blades wins the fight, I think Blades is up. I think whatever his win odds are his optimal odds because it's hard to see a Blades win where he doesn't score a lot of points, even if it's a 5-round decision, because that typically means that he's been wrestling. But then we got the other. I talked about Giga Chikadze. I think he could win this fight against Arnold Allen, and then how high scoring is 67 leg kicks? Probably not high scoring, right? I think the chalk in this range. You tagged her on Lineup HQ. You know me. I like the WMMA. I like the women's fights. I don't think Shauna Bannon is very good. This is the first fight of the night. I think it's a very low-level fight. And I mean, Alice Ardaline is like making her UFC debut, but she's not like a rookie. She's just like been on the regional scene for God knows how long. And typically that means it's not like she's going to prove or anything. But I mean, she has pretty decent win odds at 7,300. I don't know what the win looks like as far as what the score is. Can you sell me on a women's fighter at 7,300 that may end up being like 25, 27? Like people may just because people may have to play one fighter, Bilal Muhammad or under, and they may just go, well, I'll play Muhammad or I'll play Ardaline or I'll play Blades. And then they look at the rest and go, yeah, I guess I'm playing Alice Ardaline. And I don't know, sell me on her and then sell me on what other underdogs 7,300 and below that you're more likely to have like over the field.
Sure. So I'm a little bit worried about Ardaline and that tag because she's one of 2 fighters that haven't weighed in yet. And it is her UFC debut. So we'll see if she can make weight. If she doesn't make weight, if the fight still happens. Like this is one, it's the first fight of the night where if she really doesn't make weight, they might scrap it. But hopefully everything goes according to plan. It's a fight that is projected to go the distance. And I think our fight props are, favored for at least one takedown, and I think over under 60.5 significant strikes. That's a pretty decent score at 7,300. Um, so I think she can get there kind of with any kind of win, and she's got pretty good win odds for her price. So I'm seeing her with a 38, 39% implied odds for a win at 7,300. That's really good. Like, that's better than the two fighters priced ahead of her, Bilal Muhammad and Jake Hadley. I think a lot of people are going to go to Muhammad with the kind of safety of the 5 rounds, but he's only got about a 31% chance to win. Like, Ardaline's got almost a 40% chance to win. So yeah, and I agree. Like, Sean Abandon's not that good. So if Ardaline, can just get any kind of win at 7,300, like, she is the fighter at 7,500 and below who is most likely to get the win. So yeah, I think she's a good pick for lineups, but we'll see what happens with the weigh-ins. Any other fighter, I think Muhammad might come in a little bit over-owned because his win odds just aren't that good, and he's not necessarily going to put up a great score and a win. So it's easy to see him kind of ending up over-owned. Like, he's a good cash game play, sometimes that like 5-round underdog cash game play, and ends up over-owned in tournaments. So we'll see. I mean, certainly you should have. I think if he wins the fight, he's got a pretty decent chance of getting on the winning line.
Right.
Probably less than Ardaline.
Right. My favorite. Oh yeah, I was going to mention, like, now we have other fighters down here. I think me and you may be on the same page because you have this guy tagged also. You don't have a note for him yet, but he's tagged in orange. I know Sam Patterson is like a minus 400 favorite, minus 225 inside the distance. But Sam Patterson could. I mean, I don't consider him to be a durable fighter that has a good chin. Patterson probably wins with the takedown and the submission, possibly even a knockout. But Kiefer Crosby, I mean, at least you could say that he has a puncher's chance, like plus 325 inside the distance. One punch, and he's good. And that's better than I could say by a lot of the other fighters down here. I think leverage-wise also, if Patterson's going to be 38, 40% owned, and Crosby's going to be like 10, are we both on the same page that $6,900 Kiefer Crosby is the will get you 100 points or get you 3 points type of fighter that maybe you should have more of in your lineups?
Yeah, exactly. You just kind of laid out the thought process. I've got him tagged but not written up yet, and there's a possibility Gregory Rodriguez gets that. Then I might switch it up. We'll see. Maybe I'll end up tagging both of them. Kiefer Crosby, we're showing him with single-digit ownership, but he's got double-digit chances of getting a first-round win. So he should be owned. At multiple times that single-digit ownership. I think we're showing him at about 8% owned, and his implied odds for a first round win are 13%. So, and he should be owned, and his chances of winning the fight are about 22% chance. We've seen Sam Patterson. So Sam Patterson, I believe, is a local fighter. We have seen him get knocked out in the first round in London before. So it's definitely possible Crosby gets this first round win. He's got the puncher's chance. So at 6,900, he doesn't have to do much to land on the winning lineup. But he's got to, he's probably going to get the first round win or get knocked out early. But if he does get that first round win, that upsets the apple cart with Sam Patterson, and that'd be knocking off a ton of ownership. So yeah, I think in your large field tournaments, you should have about 1/5 of your lineups, I think, should have Kiefer Crosby, because that's about his chances of winning. And if he wins, he's got an excellent chance of landing on the lineup.
Right, because I think more people will play Daniel Pineda since they don't want to play Nathaniel Wood. I think more people will play Bruno Brazil. I mean, maybe not by much, or Lucas Bresky, because we have this heavyweight fight, Matt McParkin versus Lucas Bresky. I mean, I'm not all that interested in that fight, but it is a heavyweight fight, and when it comes to heavyweights, one punch ends a fight with the heavyweights. The problem is that I think this matchup is more likely McParkin going for takedowns and If this goes to the second round, them both sucking wind for the next 10 minutes, and then being one of those fights where it had so much promise in the first round, and then the next thing you know, the winner scores 54 points.
Yeah. Right. So that heavyweight fight, I guess that's the other heavyweight fight on the card. I have some interest in it because it could put up a massive score, and there is some grappling upside. There is a pretty good chance Parkin just wins, but that it's like a decision win, and it might be like 85 points. So then it's 9,100. Does that like land? Does that land on the winning GPP lineup? Probably not. But he should be rostered. He should be under consideration. And Bresky as well. He's got about a 1 in 4 chance of winning the fight. 7,100. So, you've got to consider him. They're not fighters I'm looking to avoid. I don't think they'll go over-owned. But they're not like guys my first clicks in the lineup or anything like that. I think people will probably go to Pineda more because it's 6,700, so he gives you a bunch of savings, and like it's like, oh, if I put in Pineda, then I can get like Sam Patterson or Tom Aspinall pretty easily, and so I think he might see like higher ownership than he should.
Well, we talked a lot about optimal rates, right, based on our simulations. You can get that if you're a RotoGrinders premium member. You get the Ground and Pound podcast also. Mike and Liam, that should be coming out soon. You'll be able to listen to their entire fight breakdowns, how they think the fights will play out, and then Squirrel Patrol. John has his takedowns articles, which should be coming out today. We got the expert survey also. All of that if you're a premium member. But remember, also, Freebie Friday today is the takedowns article. So if you want to preview it, get a little piece of free content, go to rotogrinders.com, click on the MMA tab. You'll find it there. And John, you'll be on MMA Crunch Time tomorrow as well. Is now 1 p.m. Eastern just like the normal Crunch Time MMA time? Just doesn't matter what time the card starts.
I think so. I mean, and it makes sense because like UFC generally is not a sport where you are waiting on that like last minute information or waiting on last minute line of changes. They do the weigh-ins a day before, thankfully. So if the fight gets canceled, it is usually the day before.
It's usually after lock, John. Usually if you did it an hour before, like, okay, and that's our preview. Get ready for the card. Here's the card. And then it's 6:01 and you have two broadcasters saying, we have unfortunate news, right? And then you can't even change the lineup. That's the way UFC goes. So you can just, it doesn't matter that you have it right before. You just do it at 1 p.m. and just save your disappointment for 6:01 p.m.
Yeah. I've noticed like there's nothing we can do about it, but I've noticed when the card starts at like 6 p.m. and it locks at 6 p.m. and they do like 20 minutes of discussion beforehand, that's a bad sign for a fight getting canceled later because they know it's canceled. Like for whatever reason, they get this information, earlier in the day, and then like as it goes on, they're like, oh, we got to fill this time, and they fill the time, like 20 minutes of discussion. If it locks at 6 and you see somebody walking out at 6:01, that's a good sign for fights not getting canceled. But even then, we don't know. I think what was it that when Dan Ige went into the ring,
he filled in for someone else because he was in the crowd or whatever.
Yeah, he pulled him out of the crowd and had him go and fight. So just gets to get Diego Lopez. So yeah, it was right for Brian Ortega. So yeah, hopefully no hijinks. But I think crunch time tomorrow at 1 p.m.
Okay, so tune into that tomorrow. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to always know when we go live. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. The thummy thumbs, you know how much I like the thummy thumbs. UFC 304 tomorrow night on DraftKings, 6 p.m. Eastern lock. Tune into Crunch Time tomorrow. I'll be back next week. We still got some more baseball. Although football is right around the corner. So I'm with you Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.